Hello, everybody. This is Austin from the Review Roundtable, and today I'm joined again by my guest, David Weiser. And today we're going to be recapping D23, but specifically all of the Star Wars news that came out of D23. It was a really packed weekend, and it was really an amazing time for Star Wars fans. We were just buried with content. And today we're going to be recapping all of the major announcements and news from D23. So, starting the lineup, we're going to talk about The Mandalorian and specifically the Mandalorian trailer. So, David, I'm going to kick it to you. What were some of your reactions just to the imagery that was shown in the Mandalorian trailer?
Um, I was fortunate enough to be able to see some footage in the room at Star Wars Celebration and back in April, and some of this felt it was kind of recycled from what I'd seen before, so I wasn't as gung ho about this trailer as a lot of other people seem to be. I mean, there was new stuff in it for sure, but like nothing like that like blew my mind type stuff. But yeah, it definitely has that space western type vibe. You get the sense this is a lawless area, and these are like morally ambiguous characters in the like gritty environment.
Absolutely. And, the cinematography that's shown in the trailer and even in the footage that was shown back at Star Wars Celebration, some of it, as you said, is recycled in this trailer. There's a lot of references to like a Sergio Leone kind of classic Western. There's one shot in particular where we see a character kind of going for their holster, kind of holding their sidearm while another character is out of focus on the other side of the frame. There's a lot of kind of standoffish type of imagery. And the first shot that began the trailer, I mean, it's super awesome. You get that shot of all of those like sticks or staffs that are planted in the ground, and on top you get to see the stormtrooper helmets just planted on them. Kind of gives you a sense of like you said, it's a lawless time. It's the remnants of the empire, and it just feels super gritty. It feels like something that we haven't seen in live action from Star Wars yet, and I think that's what's most exciting in terms of what Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and everybody at Lucasfilm, what they're doing with this series. It's very exciting, something that's never been done on live action before.
Yeah, definitely. I really love the vibe of it all. Like it's definitely like this underworld side of Star Wars we really have seen so little of, but we've always had like a little taste of it. And it's nice to finally dive headfirst into that with all these new characters. So it's not just like it doesn't feel like it's relying too heavily on what's come before. But I'm sure there's going to be references to some of those things. Like I've heard that IG-11 supposedly gets confused for IG-88 within the context of the show as well.
Yeah, and Jon Favreau was talking about that at D23. He said, if this is kind of your first exposure to Star Wars, you're really going to have a standalone adventure and you're really going to understand the story. However, for the classic Star Wars fans, he said, we've got you. There's going to be a lot of references, but it's not going to be too on the nose. It's going to have supposedly a really nice balance, and it's going to cater to all types of Star Wars fans, which is really great. And I can already see that in the trailer because, as we were just talking about, it has that classic Western vibe. But there's also a couple of Easter eggs throughout. I mean, we get to see the shot of the Death Troopers, which we remember from Rogue One. IG-11, which is Taika Waititi's character that he's voicing, obviously is kind of a callback to IG-88 from Empire Strikes Back. The main character, the Mandalorian, played by Pedro Pascal, obviously, I mean, is a Mandalorian, which is obviously a shout out to Boba Fett, Jango Fett. So even Star Wars fans that maybe aren't as familiar with the Mandalorian culture and stuff like that, they can still look at this and be like, oh, I remember something similar to that with Boba Fett. So there's some sort of surface level connection that's going to cater to all types of Star Wars fans.
Yeah, I especially got that vibe from the footage shown at Celebration because it felt like I got the sense that there's going to be stuff in it for everyone, like you were saying, and that it really feels geared towards like more of a mature audience with how gritty everything is. And it seems like it's going to be pretty violent, but not necessarily like R-rated, but like pretty edgy for like Disney Plus.
Definitely. I mean, case in point being one of the last shots of the trailer where the Mandalorian flips out his blaster and he shoots the um he shoots the control panel, and like the door like absolutely just like shreds this one guy. That was so cool. That was definitely one of the favorite moments for me in the trailer. Um, but also, I mean, yeah, like you said, it really feels more violent. It obviously won't be like R rated by any sorts, but it feels like it's going that extra little mile, and kind of proven to be more of a Western, a little bit more morally ambiguous characters, and so on and so forth. The lack of color really kind of paves the way in setting up that kind of bleak tone, which is something that I'm super excited for. So, David, did you have any other sort of standout moments from the trailer that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, there's a lot of like familiar species, like there's Twi'lek, there's Quarren, the Ugnaught riding the Blurg. There's a carbon. There's the like. Supposedly, this is inside the Mandalorian ship, the Racer Crest. There was like lines of people frozen in carbonite.
Yep.
And it's being speculated that the Mandalorian freezes all his bounties.
Which is also another callback to Empire Strikes Back. So it's another cool Easter egg that's there. Something else that I did notice is that comedian Bill Burr has been cast in this series, and I believe it's that shot with the Twi'lek that's kind of winking at some character off screen. If you look in the middle of the frame, you see this one bald guy. His face is turned from the camera. You can't see his face, but many have been led to believe that that's going to be Bill Burr's character. And what's really interesting about that was I was watching this interview that he did with Conan, maybe just a couple of years ago, and they were talking about movies that he grew up with, and he talked about how he never got into Star Wars. Like he watched the original Star Wars when he was like 28, and he said that he just didn't get into it, wasn't for him. So I find it really fascinating that he of all people is in this show. So in my mind, that just kind of tells me that this is probably a really quality story, really quality script, if you get people that aren't even into Star Wars cast into this. So that's a really cool takeaway as well.
Yeah, and it's probably a nice paycheck as well. So
yeah. So moving on from the Mandalorian, we had a couple of other little announcements. So obviously, the Clone Wars season 7 is happening, but before this weekend, we never had an official release date. So they officially announced that season 7 will be hitting Disney Plus in February. So what's also important to note is that all Disney Plus original series, they're not going to be going after the binge model of like Netflix and Hulu. They're going to be dropping their episodes once a week. So Mandalorian will be a weekly thing. Clone Wars and all of the Marvel shows coming forward will be in the weekly model. Personally, I'm a big fan of that because, like, for example, with Stranger Things season 3, I binged that in the first day, and then I had depression after that because then it's like, well, I have to wait 1 or 2 years for the next season. And I think by not following the binge model, this feels more like an event, week to week. There's a discussion, there's an anticipation to be had. And instead of watching the whole series or the season in like 1 or 2 days, you can stretch it out over a span of maybe like 2 months. So personally, I'm a big fan of that. Do you feel pretty similarly with that, David?
yeah, for sure. Like it's nice to be able to take a break between the episodes. Like that's one thing about like I mean the Netflix binge model is cool, but sometimes you feel like pressured to watch it all at once because so many other people do that it's easy to get spoiled about something down the line, so you feel obligated to watch it as soon as possible, as much as possible. With the weekly, you don't really it's not as much of a I guess not necessarily a chore, but like it's not as much content you're having to watch in such a short amount of time. Like you can watch at your own pace and not necessarily feel obligated to be caught up to the same degree as you would with like a binge model show.
Another good thing that I think that this model kind of has going for it is that if you look at the lineup for the next couple of months in terms of Star Wars content, with the Mandalorian being a weekly thing, and I don't know how many episodes, I don't think they reveal how many episodes it is, but I can feel pretty safe in assuming it'll take us past the Rise of Skywalker, and it'll probably go into January, which makes sense because say Mandalorian is like 10 to 12 episodes, that'll take you from November 12th, the day that Disney Plus drops, and it'll take you into January. By the time the series is done, well, you got a Clone Wars in a couple of weeks. So it's spaced out really well. That way, you've got Mandalorian, you've got, Jedi Fallen Order and all of the novels, all of that content. Then you've got The Rise of Skywalker, Clone Wars Season 7, and so on and so forth. I think the spacing of the Star Wars content is going to be a lot better, as opposed to the Mandalorian just dropping all on one day. You consume it, then it's a month until you get Rise of Skywalker. I really like this model instead. So there's always a type of Star Wars dialogue happening. So moving on to the next series, we don't have a whole lot of information about this one, but at D23, Kathleen Kennedy brought out Diego Luna and Alan Tudyk from Rogue One. So the Cassian Andor series is still happening. I believe they're going into production in 2020, I believe. And what was really funny was that when they brought those two out on the panel, Diego Luna's excitement for returning to the series was palpable, and same thing with Alan Tudyk. They were cracking jokes. It was really fun. And what was really kind of funny was that Diego Luna was like, hey, can we tell them the title of the series? And Kathleen Kennedy was like, yeah, no, we can't do that. And that definitely felt like an unscripted moment. But I do think Alan Tudyk kind of came in with the save and started making more jokes that kind of eased that uncomfortable moment. Did you kind of feel similarly with that, David?
Yeah, but and it's kind of weird because it's like I don't understand why they can't reveal the title, because it's probably just going to be like Cassian or Cassian Andor or like Andor, or like it's going to be some variation of his name most likely. And so it's like, why not just reveal that? Like maybe they don't have like the title treatment for it yet, so they don't want to drop that because like I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why they couldn't have just dropped the title, because it's not like, I mean, I understand they just announced all of this stuff and are showing footage for Mandalorian, more footage for Skywalker, all that, but like, what's a title going to do? I don't really think that's going to ruin anybody's anticipation. That'll probably just heighten it, if anything. But yeah, not a whole lot of information is known about Cassian Andor other than we know it's happening, and it's going to be a Disney Plus original series. So definitely one of the biggest highlights at D23 as a whole this past weekend was something that us Star Wars fans have seen coming for a long, long time, and it was super satisfying to see this happen. Kathleen Kennedy saved this the best for last, really, on Friday night. They had shown the Mandalorian footage. Everybody was getting super excited, and then it seemed like they were done, but they had one more announcement for the last. They saved the best for last with the Obi-Wan original Disney Plus series announcement. They brought out Ewan McGregor. He did miss an opportunity to say hello there, but that out of the way, he came out and, I mean, they just went straight to it. Ewan said to Kathleen Kennedy, he's like, Kathleen, can you ask me in front of all of these people, all of these witnesses, am I going to play Obi-Wan Kenobi again? She asks him the question, and the expression in Ewan's voice was just palpable. He goes, yes, I'm going to play him again. And just that felt like such a satisfying moment, because I think us Star Wars fans knew it was coming. It was originally supposed to be a film, but it got retooled into a series after the financial performance of Solo in the box office. When I went to Star Wars Celebration this year, I was anticipating some sort of announcement with Ewan McGregor about this series there. So I was really surprised when we didn't get it. But a lot of people kept on saying, "I'll just wait for D23, just wait for D23." But for some reason, I was getting doubts about it until just the week prior, we had started seeing all of those reports from like Hollywood Reporter, I believe, and all of these other various outlets about Ewan McGregor signed a contract. So it's like we kind of were prepping for some sort of announcement at D23. But how did you feel? How did you react to this news, David?
I'm really excited about it. I feel like that's a interesting period to explore in terms of story. Like I'm really hoping for a character driven, like kind of Logan-esque story for Obi-Wan while in his time on Tatooine. And I feel like a lot of the canon material has kind of offered various little nuggets of what he could have been doing on during that time, like protecting Luke, etc. Um, and yeah, and the fact Ewan's back. I mean, I never thought they would do it without Ewan. I've noticed over the past few years, like a lot of like meme pages have made memes about like the fact that they possibly recasting the role, but I don't think they would ever do that because thus far in the Disney era, anytime they brought back a character, they've gone out of their way to bring back the actor who played them in the prequels, like Bail Organa. Mon Mothma, they brought back the actress who played her in the deleted scene. So it's like
Yep.
that much commitment shows like they were never going to recast Ewan.
And they shouldn't, because even though the prequels have been divisive, and people have come around on the prequels for sure, there's a lot more prequel love now, but I think no matter where you land on that spectrum, most people will agree that Ewan McGregor's portrayal of Obi-Wan Kenobi was a lot of people's favorite part, myself included. So to me, it was, if they were ever going to bring back Obi-Wan Kenobi, of course they were going to bring him back. And kind of like what you were saying, I'm really excited about this because the series is going to take place 8 years after Revenge of the Sith. So I believe from Revenge of the Sith to A New Hope is 30-year span. Am I correct? Is that 30 years?
It's 19.
It's
Yeah.
19 years. Yeah, 30 years is from Return of the Jedi to Force Awakens. My bad. But still, that's a very long time in between. And this makes sense because it's been already 14 years since Revenge of the Sith. So Ewan's aged, Obi-Wan's aged. They don't have to do any sort of de-aging kind of technology because of waiting too long. I mean, it kind of feels like the perfect time to get them jump back into the series and just explore more in this universe. And I'm all for it. And even back in the Solo premiere, the premiere for that film, Ewan McGregor attended that. So that was also like one big red flag that people were like, "Oh, wait, are they going to announce this?" But I think they were. But then obviously after Solo flopped, they had to reconsider the IP, reconsider how they were going to go tell future stories in Star Wars, and that film ended up getting retooled into a series. And personally, I would have loved to have seen a movie, but I'm even more excited about a series because, whereas a film would be 2 to 2.5 hours, this series could be 6 to 10, 12 plus hours. And as long as it's quality content, as long as it's not filler, I think that's just more opportunity for rich storytelling.
That's also another series that's going to begin filming next year. And I'm expecting it and Cassian to probably come on Disney Plus around 2021. We'll have to wait and see. I'm sure we'll get news about those as production develops, as production goes underway, and I'm sure we'll get like heavy updates on those at next year's celebration.
And then you also have to consider, I mean, The Mandalorian season 2 is prepping. They're in pre-production right now. I believe they're shooting this October. So we have to think of, okay, season 2 of Mandalorian is probably, taking a wild guess, probably going to be 2020, perhaps early 2021. So when you kind of figure out, since the next few years we won't have a Star Wars film, I think Disney and Lucasfilm, they're really positioning these live action series as kind of like the filler for no film. So in 2020, obviously we have Clone Wars season 7, but I'm assuming we'll get season 2 of Mandalorian. Obi-Wan is going in production next year, so I really don't think it'll make a 2020 release date. Probably a 2021, and I would assume the same thing with Cassian. But then we have to start thinking about what if they do a third season of Mandalorian? Does that mean 2021 we could potentially see 3 seasons of a live action Star Wars series in Cassian and Mandalorian and Obi-Wan? What are your thoughts on concerning that?
Yeah, I think that's totally possible. And I don't think it's going to be, I don't think 3 series in one year would present the same challenges as like 3 movies in one year, because the series are so different from one another. Like if you had 3 Star Wars movies in one year, I think they'd all be relatively similar in terms of tone, etc. But like I feel like the 3 series in one year is going to be similar to like 3 MCU movies in one year, where each MCU movie has its own unique spin on a certain genre. Where Guardians of the Galaxy is like a space opera, Ant-Man's like a heist, and then etc. And you can apply that to like any of the solo offshoot movies. Kind of have go in their own space, and they're dealing with their own characters, so it doesn't really it doesn't really cramp on the other movie to have it within that shortest space of time, and like they cross over, intersect, and all that. I don't think there's going to be a lot of crossover between those 3 shows because they're all taking place at different time periods. But guess there could always be some like random, like there'll be maybe some random background character in like Mos Eisley and Obi-Wan that maybe shows up in Mandalorian or something. Like who knows?
And moving into Saturday for D23, that's when attendees were treated to what we were expecting to be just a behind the scenes reel, no real new footage per se. A lot of people were just expecting like a behind the scenes featurette akin to what they did with The Last Jedi a couple of years ago. However, didn't get that whatsoever. We actually got a trailer for The Rise of Skywalker. Even though the internet didn't get it until Monday, attendees were able to see it Saturday, and people were live tweeting the reactions and trailer descriptions and all of that. So even though the world didn't see the trailer Saturday, the world pretty much knew what happened. And the trailer begins really beautifully with an homage to all of the previous Star Wars films. It kind of takes you from 77 all the way to 2019. This big gargantuan Skywalker saga. The music really evokes a sense of nostalgia and just love for the series, and it builds for over a minute. Once we get past the 1 minute mark, then we start getting into the Rise of Skywalker footage, and the scene that really blew everybody away was the final scene of the trailer with Rey. We see Rey in a dark cloak and robe, and she is hooded. She has this double-wielded lightsaber, and she extends it out, and it's a red extended dual-wield lightsaber, akin to that of Darth Maul, and that was certainly a highlight of the entire trailer. But I was very surprised by that. I think it's clearly a JJ misdirect. I feel like the context of that scene is probably not what it seems like on the surface level. Give me some of your reactions towards that Rey twist at the end of the trailer.
The one thing I've been seeing a lot that I'm like, I hope it's not this. I don't think this would ever be the case, but I've seen a lot of people just jump to the conclusion, oh, it's a clone, or maybe Rey's a clone and all this stuff, and I'm like, oh no. But it's likely some sort of vision or like force, like a dark side force cave. Like the surroundings look similar to the one in The Last Jedi that Rey goes into when she has her like kind of vision, and there's all the multiple Reys, and she does like the little snapping thing, and she touches the mirror asking to like see her parents, and she just sees her reflection, and where she kind of finds out she's nobody. And it also kind of resembles like the cave from Empire Strikes Back, where Luke confronts like a dark version of himself. So I've seen some speculation that maybe it could be similar like that for Rey. I think there's also like I don't know how likely this is because the fact they're putting it in the marketing so early, but there's always the possibility it is genuine, and she through some form of manipulation from Palpatine's involvement, she switches sides, and Ben Solo is uh takes up the Skywalker saber, and he tries to bring her back to the light, and that's how he earns his redemption. That's always a possibility. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can interpret this, and no one's going to really, who knows, everyone's probably way off the mark from whatever it actually is, but we'll have to wait and see in December.
After seeing this, I, for one, actually kind of dig the theory that, that Ben maybe gets redeemed halfway through the film and then Rey is lured in by Palpatine, into the temptation of him and the dark side. And maybe she genuinely is falling to the dark side and succumbing to Palpatine. And, it'd be Ben the one that would attempt at least to pull her from the dark side and bring her back to the light. Again, the fact that this image is even in the trailer kind of gives me the feeling that's not going to be the case. I feel like that might be a little too obvious by having this image in the marketing, especially because it's only August. You have to keep in mind we still have one more trailer that's going to be coming out, at least one more in October, and then all the TV spot footage leading up to the release. So we have quite a bit more footage that we'll still be seeing. So you know, I am a fan of that theory, but I don't know how likely that is. I think, and I don't know if I necessarily like this idea, but I think the most realistic scenario, everybody's kind of agreeing, is that it would be just like some sort of a vision. Yeah. So aside from the race scene, I think for me personally, another big standout was, we get to see another clash of lightsabers that we haven't seen since The Force Awakens. We get to see that epic shot of Rey and Kylo fighting on the remains of the second Death Star from Return of the Jedi. And you can definitely tell it is the remains of the Death Star because you can see the turrets off to the left-hand side of the frame. You can see the turrets, which are the same turrets from the Death Star. And also, if you remember in the teaser trailer, the end of that trailer, you get that big sweeping shot of the crew, and you see like the tidal waves crashing, and you see the remains of the Death Star. So to me, it only makes sense that this is going to be Rey and Kylo fighting on the remains of the Death Star. And I think further proof for that is in that sequence, you also see like bolts of lightning. And a little bit earlier on in the trailer, you get to see that shot of like those hundreds and hundreds of Imperial starships, and there's a little bit of lightning there. So in me connecting the dots, I'm assuming that those starships are above the forest moon of Endor, where the remains of the Death Star are, and you see Rey and Kylo fighting. And I feel like this is probably going to be something in the second act, perhaps even the opening of the film. I don't think it's going to be the climax, but no matter the case, I'm so pumped for this scene.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the effects are phenomenal. Like everything looks. It's such a like the sequel trilogy, or well, really just the whole batch of Disney Star Wars films have mixed practical and visual and like digital effects so seamlessly, and that everything looks incredibly realistic. And yeah, I'm really eager to see that. I think the Imperial Star Destroyers could possibly be like a fleet that was waiting for Palpatine, like part of Palpatine's contingency plan, that are off in the unknown regions, waiting for his return for some sort of signal, and they're gonna come. I think has to do with all like the Sith troopers and all that jazz.
So I actually really do like that theory that the starships are actually, just there for Palpatine's use. And if you look at them closely, I know somebody on Twitter pointed this out. I didn't notice it at first, but all those Imperial starships are definitely Imperial starships and not First Order starships. You can tell there's a difference. So that leads me to believe that it's something that Palpatine's kind of built up or had set away as like a contingency plan of sorts. And like you said, probably have something to do with the Sith troopers, I'm assuming. But I really do like that theory. To me, connecting the dots, that would definitely make sense.
Yeah, and then there's the whole red eye C3PO thing that has been the source of many great memes in the past 2 days.
And isn't that a connection to the Doctor Aphra comics as well?
Well, people are taking. I don't think like there's a protocol droid in the Doctor Aphra comics called 000, who's basically C3PO with red eyes, but he's like a black or silver, I think. I don't think that's 000, but people have been making that link. I think there's a there's I don't entirely. I mean, there were the leaks of like C3PO holding the crossbow or
Yeah.
Chewbacca's crossbow that makes it seem like it could be some sort of like violent protocol. Like he could be changing his programming so he could be. I don't really understand what the intention of doing that, like why they would want to do that to C3PO. Like I'm curious to see if that what the purpose behind that is and why and who's doing this to him. And then there's also, I mean, there's also something else I've seen brought up is the fact that he's had his memory wiped at the end of Revenge of the Sith, but in the reported supposedly in the comics, he still has those memory files within him. He just can't necessarily access them, and it could be some way to pull those out for some reason. Maybe they need some information about some specific location or something regarding Anakin, or who knows what they need to get out of him, but it could be something linked to that.
Yeah, and I actually think the theory going around that maybe he is, like there was obviously that leaked image with C3PO with the crossbow, and now with the red eyes connecting the dots. I think he's definitely going to have more of an impact in this movie. I feel like he's more than likely going to be in the action in this one because Anthony Daniels in particular was really excited about this movie. I think he was kind of teasing some stuff at Celebration that 3PO was going to be perhaps a little bit more involved in the action. And looking at the footage in that teaser trailer, there's that one shot of, we've got Poe and I believe Chewie, 3PO kind of on that speeder. So I'm assuming that the fact that 3PO is even on it might suggest that maybe he's got something to do there. I mean, he doesn't have like a crossbow in that shot or anything, but to me, it makes
Yeah,
sense with Anthony Daniels being as excited as he is. I'm assuming, 3PO is obviously like a character that runs away anytime there's a battle. So to me, I think it'd be pretty cool if we got to see him involved in the action on this one.
yeah. One thing that's like it does kind of bring the question of why did they bring C3PO along? Like there has to be some purpose, and I do think it like I'm very curious to learn. Like Anthony Daniels has kind of teased the idea that he's going to have a more prominent role this time around, and that C3PO is a big part of it, as well as Palpatine's also been reportedly is supposedly going to have a big part of it, according to Daisy Ridley and a couple of the other cast members. And I just love this idea that it's like kind of tying into so many elements from the previous movies and bringing everything together from the entire saga into this epic finale. I'm just very excited for December 19th.
Yeah, I can't echo your sentiments more. And another thing that kind of lends credence to this idea that 3PO might be more involved in this story is the fact that I'm pretty sure R2D2 has been totally missing from all of the marketing material. Am I correct? Like, we haven't seen them together in any of the stuff, like any of the trailers.
Yeah, the footage shown thus far hasn't had R2D2 in it all. The only thing I think I've seen him in related to the Rise of Skywalker is the mural that they put up at Star Wars Celebration. He's on there with C3PO, but I haven't seen him in any of the posters, marketing material in terms of the trailers and this sizzle reel. Um, I feel like R2D2 is also, I think he's also being hidden away for a good reason. And I think he might also have a bigger role than we're expecting. Not necessarily, I think he and C3PO are going to be bigger parts of this movie than people are expecting them to be. which is kind of going to be a nice change of pace for the sequel trilogy because they've been kind of sidelined for the most part. Like they had really great standout moments in each movie, but they were kind of off to the side compared to the previous 6 films.
Yeah, because I mean, what really pops out to me is that I mean, we've seen 3PO in the marketing. We're hearing all this stuff that he might have a bigger role, but with R2 being absent, it's like these guys are a dynamic duo, right? They've been together in literally every single film. So the fact that they possibly are separated in this movie, and maybe they're each um, posing as really important pieces to this finale, by having to have them separated, to me that's a really interesting dynamic. And again, like you said, we really won't know until December 19th, but just kind of the possibility of that to me is really intriguing, especially because like you said, in the sequel trilogy, they've been pretty much sidelined. They haven't had a whole lot to do, so perhaps they have some sort of bigger purpose in this film, which I'm all for.
Yeah, I think there's always the possibility that R2 stays with Leia for whatever reason, and maybe there's some big purpose there. But well, I guess yeah, we'll definitely have to wait and see. Just because he's the only one, like really, that seems to be omitted from that group shot in the first trailer when they're all looking at the Death Star wreckage. Because there's Chewbacca, C-3PO, even the new droid Dio, BB-8, Poe, Finn, and Rey. Um, oh, and then I guess Rose also, but I'm expecting Rose to have a relatively minor role, just because I don't know, she hasn't been showcased in any of the marketing. I feel like she's going to be kind of staying with the Resistance base, kind of with Leia and like Connix and those characters. Like that's kind of the role I'm seeing for Rose as of right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting because the only bit that we've seen from Rose is like one still image that we saw at Celebration. But other than that, she hasn't been in any other images or trailers or anything like that. Which would suck because I really do enjoy Kelly Marie Tran's performance as Rose, and I would love to see a lot more of her character. But again, if it best serves the story for her to kind of be uh, sidelined a little bit, that's just what it is. But um, did you have anything else you wanted to talk about before we wrapped up on Scott?
Um, well, there's when all the rebel ships come out of hyperspace, there's like pretty much every rebel fighter that was in the original trilogy is
Yeah.
represented there. There you got the A wings, your B wings, your X wings, your Y wings. You have the Tantive 4 or Tantive I, Tantive 4, and there was another ship that I did not recognize. It's probably a new ship. A lot of people were mistaking it for the Falcon, but yeah, the Falcon was also relatively absent from this reel. I mean, you can see it in the background at Pisana and so the scene when they're coming on, like there's the village they're celebrating. You can see it in the background there. But other than that, it wasn't in this reel at all. I
Yeah.
think that scene of them coming out of hyperspace and then it immediately cuts to like the Star Destroyer stuff. I feel like those are two separate scenes because the environments are so different. Like it's like a brown, like kind of musty environment, and then like the Star Destroyers are in this like blue, uh, clouded area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned the world of Asana. I wanted to talk about that quick. That's actually perhaps the planet I'm most looking forward to seeing in the movie. Obviously, we saw that in the teaser trailer with Ray flipping over the TIE fighter. But if looking at the footage that they showed in the sizzle reel, we get to see a really epic shot of our crew just kind of watching some sort of a festival or something like that. And I've seen some people draw comparisons to the festival scene in Thor Ragnarok, where you get to see like the green sort of uh, what is it, like the green dust kind of go in the air, like some sort of a not firework type of, not a firework, but some sort of other derivative of that. But the colors in this scene of like the green and just all of the different costumes that you're seeing, and it screams Star Wars to me. I know it's another desert planet, but it looks and feels distinctly different. That it's probably the planet I'm most looking forward to seeing in the film.
Um, as of right now, I think the um not necessarily planets we know, but I'm really hoping to see some of the planets from the saga, um, like represented in some form. I think Mustafar would be amazing. I have this like gut. I would really love to see Kylo Ren visit Vader's castle, and I think that is a very high possibility.
And that's
Um,
another thing. Sorry to cut in, but that's another thing that we didn't mention. So it wasn't in the sizzle reel, or sorry, it wasn't in the trailer at D23, but there was like the day before just a little 10-second clip that they had attached to some other footage of Rise of Skywalker, and we get to see this shot of the Darth Vader mask, and we get to see the shot of Kylo like taking it out and looking at it. And I'm hearing a lot of theories, and again, these are theories, I don't know, but that's part of Kylo's attraction to it. Perhaps he's been trying to connect with his grandfather, such as in the scene in The Force Awakens, but perhaps he was talking to Palpatine the whole time, some sort of a trap or attachment. How do you feel about that possibility? Do you think that would make a lot of sense?
yeah, it would make perfect sense because then I feel like it would really tie into the whole Palpatine returning thing if like it would make more sense for for him. He's never met his grandfather. For him to be kind of deceived by Palpatine into believing that he was speaking with Vader when it was really Palpatine kind of manipulating Kylo Ren. I feel like there's a lot of I think so in the Vader comics, we learn you learn that Vader constructed his castle multiple times in an effort to resurrect Padme, and he had this like Sith helmet artifact with that had like the spirit of a Sith Lord Momin, who is manipulating Vader to bring himself back from the dead, and like he was able to resurrect himself essentially, and Vader like ended up stopping it, and Momin ended up back trapped back inside the helmet again. But I feel like something similar could happen with Palpatine and Kylo Ren, and he would manipulate Kylo Ren into thinking maybe he was helping resurrect Padme or something when he's talking about finish what Vader started, and that would be he could trick him into thinking he was doing that to like he would go on this like single goal that Vader was working towards, and actually accidentally bring back Palpatine, and then he's on the outs. He's cast out of the First Order because Palpatine basically is like takes charge, etc. I see that as a real possibility, and I'm curious to see if that ends up happening or not. But if it doesn't, it doesn't really matter. If it does, that'd be cool.
I actually really do love that theory, and I think there might be some hints towards that because obviously in that trailer that we got, right before it cut to the Rey scene with her flipping the lightsaber, we did hear the Darth Vader, uh, the mask, like the breathing. We did hear that for like a split second. So I mean, especially being the climax to the Skywalker saga, it could just be a cool little Easter egg to be like, this is kind of uh, telling the audience, hey, we're wrapping up all of the movies, so we're going to put some little details from all the movies in there. But it also could be just a little bit of a hint towards a deeper Darth Vader Palpatine connection going on in the film. So, and again, I mean, this whole mystery box element to J.J. Abrams' marketing style, it's driving us crazy. I mean, obviously, if you're listening to this right now, all we're doing is theorizing over what could be, what probably will never be. But I think that's part of the fun of just of Star Wars, with the mythology being as rich as it is. We can talk about this for hours and hours, passionate discussions and theories. But at the end of the day, I'm just out of my mind excited for the Rise of Skywalker. So again, thank you, David, for joining me in this discussion about all of the massive D23 Star Wars announcements. I can't wait for everything from Mandalorian, Clone Wars, Obi-Wan, Cassian Andor, and of course, Rise of Skywalker. Just it's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. So again, thank you, David, for joining. And this is Austin from the Review Roundtable signing out.